Hello, BookTube. Welcome to a Tuesday Megastuff video. I was informed by a great number of people that one of the bits of stuff they'd like to see on a regular basis in these videos is the bean. Apparently you're the star of this channel, not me. I've told them many times to keep their eyes on the prize, but they don't do it. She's always willing to make a little visit on my lap. Then she realizes nothing's happening, and then she wants to go. But in addition to my baby, there are also your babies. To start our Megastuff video, I put out a call for pictures of your Shakespeare. And I got pictures of your pets, and I've been getting bombarded with them, and that's been great by me. I asked for dogs, but as you can see, I've been getting cats as well. This is like a miniature version of Goran right there. And I got quite a few cats. There's two of them on the bed, or is it three? No, there's two on the bed. Just sort of laying there. Who knows what they do if you tried to join them. There's one on a suspensor bed. Is that what that is? Some sort of suspensor bed? It looks like the thing that the cat is actually laying on is suspended above a pillow. Do cats like that? I've never seen something like that before. There's one on a banister rail, far, far above the ground. I thought there was one other as well. Now look at that. Look at that. A chair full of vicious fangs and teeth. But it wasn't all cats. There were quite a few dogs. I want to show you them as well. There are also a couple of absolute winner dog pictures. In fact, it's just a great batch of dog pictures this time around. Like for instance, there's someone wearing a little hoodie that I guess keeps a dog warm when it's chilly. Frida would not wear such a thing in a million years. Knows nothing. And to talk about keeping warm, it looks like this dog has problems with that. Look at that. Has problems keeping warm. Oh, the poor baby. Here we have the best possible way to keep warm, whether you're a dog or a human, and that is to sleep in big bunches. I paused for a minute when I saw this because that middle dog looks just like my Mailman Moore. I guess maybe the middle dog is a pointer, but you can't really make it out. But same big black spot on the back, same speckle of spots on the shanks there, same head. It's kind of weird. There's another dog trying to keep warm in a little cozy outfit. And then I want to show you my two favorite for this time around. First one is a dog trying to stay awake while dealing with William Shakespeare's Richard II, which is one of the plays I will be discussing for ShakeTube this month. And look at that. He's trying to stay awake with Richard II as his pillow. Isn't that awesome? And then this one, I don't know how you could get a picture like this. Frida would not do this in a million years. No dog I've ever had would do this in a million years, except Lucy. My Basset Hound would have done this because she didn't particularly like moving for any reason at all. But this is not that. This is not laziness. This is control. And that is amazing. Look at that. That is a ladybug on that dog's nose. Alive. That is just incredible. That is just amazing. So that is your cavalcade of babies this time around. Then we can do bookish news. And the bookish news has to do with an irritation. I've often mentioned that I don't like cut covers, the type that have a little window, a gatefold cut in them, because they are an invitation to destruction. If you're taking books on and off the shelf, you're going to destroy. You're going to rip an opening like that. And sure enough, I have a book. I showed it, I think, earlier this year. It's The New Testament in Its World by N.T. Wright and Michael Bird. And it has one of those covers. Look what happened to it. Oh, let's get the lighting right. Look what happened to it. Simply pulling books on and off the shelf. That's what happened to this thing. So I have to try and repair that today. And when I do, I'm going to make sure to repair it so that this can't happen again. I'm not just going to reattach this as best I can. I'm also going to put clear plastic tape over that window facing in and out so that the pieces will stick to each other and make a clear cellophane window right there, which is what it should have been all along, so that doesn't happen anymore. This is an absolutely huge book, as you can tell from the size of the spine. It's an absolutely huge book. Those are our two authors. And it's just a gigantic, rambling meditation on the history of the New Testament, the provenance, of the New Testament, the spiritual dimensions, the spiritual meanings, all that sort of stuff. I got it, and I have been loving it. I've gone back to it so many times. It's huge. It's like 1,200 pages long. So it's an endeavor. Excuse me. It's an endeavor to read, but boy, is it a treat to revisit. Oh my! So of course, I want this cover is nice. I want to save the cover. I just have to. I should have reinforced it to start with, but I didn't do that. That's on me. Then we have some mail. I don't have any Mailman updates for today. I haven't seen him yet today. I might. He'll be out on his route later today and into the early evening, so I might see him, but not yet. And another thing that I wanted to bring up there. We've got the mail, and we've also got a couple of packages to open, some books in the mail. But there were a couple of things, two other things that I wanted to mention. One was to remind you that I have a podcast. Okay, I have a podcast that is done on the internet radio station of the Cedarburg Public Library in Wisconsin. It's been a little rocky lately. There were technical difficulties at their end. There were technical difficulties at my end. My producer assures me that these are early days and that these things happen and that it's no big deal. It's nothing to worry about or get frustrated about. Just keep doing it, and eventually it will all work out nice and smooth. So that is always in my info now. That podcast is always in my info. So if you're interested, if you're the podcast type of person, I have one now. I don't know what's going to become of it, but I have one. And another thing that I wanted to mention just happened today. I today earned my Zoom spurs. All of you will be familiar with Zoom now, thanks to the pandemic. It's an app that allows for multiple person virtual meetings. And I downloaded the app today. I learned its features. I learned how to record, and I learned how to upload. And I have a young friend who is willing to edit, happy to edit as many Zoom conversations as I make, to take out the fuzzy bits at the beginning, the fuzzy bits at the end, any kinds of technical interruptions that happen in the meantime. And that means Zoom conversations. All across the map. I want Zoom conversations with authors. I want Zoom conversations with other booktubers. And maybe even, if I'm ambitious about it, YouTubers outside the booktube world. I'm eager to start experimenting, so you can count on seeing that. Not everybody's going to refuse. But anyway, we have mail. One of the things I got was Esquire, the new issue of Esquire magazine, which is full of obscene products. That's what the beginning is. The beginning of the magazine is all just obscene advertising for products, all of which are just unbelievably expensive. We're talking $7,000 wristwatches in here. The analog, the big, heavy, chunky analog wristwatch like this thing that tobacco addicts wear. It's this one right here, actually, the one that I just showed you, is $7,000. That wristwatch costs $7,000. It's an accessory to smoking, and that's why young men love them. It's just utterly ridiculous. You check your phone 500 times a day. 500 times a day. And of those 500 times that you check your phone that tells you the time, probably 100 of those 500 times you spend more than just a minute on your phone. 100 out of those 500 times you're probably stuck there just doing whatever. That's how much of your life you spend on a device that tells you the time. So you're not getting a wristwatch to tell you the time, and that is all that a wristwatch should be for. but this, although Esquire and GQ and Vanity Fair can be frustrating in that way, because they pander to the grotesque overcompensation of young Wall Street business a-hole drones who buy things all the time. The things don't get out of the boxes at home in the apartments that they rent for obscene amounts of money that aren't furnished, that have no furniture except maybe a bare mattress on the floor with an ashtray next to it. They're paying $30,000 a month for those apartments, and the stuff that arrives from Amazon that they order through magazines like this, $7,000 wristwatches, grills, outdoor grills, that sort of thing. What ties? There's a necktie in here that's $800. That stuff, when it arrives, is never unpacked because they are never home. They work from pre-dawn until 1, 2 in the morning, and their a-hole bosses say that is normal. Got to do that. Got to grind. I don't know what's happened to those creatures now that there's no Wall Street. That now that the financial center of New York has gone remote. Maybe it hasn't gone as remote as I think it has, but of course that aspect of these kinds of magazines is annoying. Short-lived federal guidelines make it impossible for these magazines to actually advertise smoking products. They once were able to, and they will be able to again in no time at all. None whatsoever. I'm amazed that legislation hasn't been broken already. But in the meantime, these things are loaded with advertisements for all the stuff that hasn't been clamped down on. Chewing tobacco, vaping, juuling, all the stuff that's every bit as lethal, but that isn't specified by that legislation. So, in that respect, these kinds of lad mags can be rather annoying, rather distasteful. But they will always have at least one genuine article, at least one thing that they will have that is genuinely good, well written, and genuinely interesting. And you just have to go to these magazines for that sort of thing. I do anyway. And this has one of those. This is by, let me see if I can get the, this is by Julian Smith. It's the, okay. The design is just awful. Oh God, okay. This is the 2-page spread that is introducing this piece by Julian Smith. Now if you can hunt, you can find his name. But that is the 2-page spread. That is a city skyline being menaced by an enormous storm cloud. And there is a list of major places where major storms have occurred. And if you hunt around in that word salad, I think you can see that the title of the piece is Into the Storm. I don't know who does the mock-up copy for these things, but they ought to be promptly fired. That is just, anyway. The piece is extremely good. The type of thing that I come to these magazines for. It's all about the people who actually fly the helicopters into flooded zones to rescue people. And what that's like, how you do that, and the stories that they have to tell. And it puts you right there at the bar table with them while they tell those stories. Just fantastic. Just fantastic. And we also have the TLS, the London Times Literary Supplement, the foremost literary review of the time. When it comes to the TLS, I read the whole thing, but I tend to take you straight to the letters column to see if there's anything new and fascinating that might come up. Something did this time around. Something that I've been expressing very strong opinions about since long before there was a BookTube. And I've expressed those opinions on BookTube many times. And we're going to go through it again because I love repeating myself. I mean, I love repeating myself. This is a letter from Anthony Marcel in London. Anthony, if you are watching, I'm sorry to read your letter, but it is in a public domain, and I'm also sorry to say that your reasoning resembles that of a horse's patoot. But again, public domain. You want to come on this channel and argue your points? As I mentioned, I now know Zoom, so you're not free. You're not safe. Nobody is. You want to argue this point by point with somebody who knows the history as well as you do, you feel free to get in touch with me. My email's on every video. This is Anthony's letter. Nathan Greenfield's review of John Reeves's book, The Lost Indictment of Robert E. Lee, seems uncritical and cursory. Lee's changing reputation is fascinating, but his indictment for treason, aimed at, quote, those responsible for the rebellion, end quote, was dropped because, besides desire for reconciliation, Lee was not responsible for any criterion for succession or initiation of force. He was on record before the war against both slavery and secession. He reluctantly resigned from the Federal Army only when Virginia seceded, after hostilities began, stating he could not attack his own home and state, asking if he could go home and not fight. The Virginia Convention elected him to command without his knowledge before he returned home. He debated accepting for 2 days. There was no evidence that he permitted any wartime atrocities. He advocated freeing and recruiting slaves and spoke against mistreatment of surrendering Union soldiers, both black and white. Greenfield writes, quote, Reeves tells us that Lee ordered the whipping of recaptured slaves, including a female who was also stripped to the waist, and that afterwards he ordered their flayed backs to be washed with brine. This account is highly disputed, which Reeves largely ignores. Forced in 1857 to manage his late father-in-law's plantation to recoup the estate's debts, Lee could not free all slaves immediately. In 1859, Wesley Norris, his sister and cousin, fled, but were recaptured. Reeves's account comes from 2 anonymous letters in the anti-slavery New York Daily Tribune. After the war, Norris was interviewed by the abolitionist National Anti-Slavery Standard. Unlike the anonymous letter writers, he did not state that Lee whipped his sister and others. He said Lee ordered their washing of their backs with brine as an anti-infection. In 1934, the historian Douglas Freeman described the accusation as, quote, Lee's first experience with the extravagance of irresponsible anti-slavery agitators. Irresponsible anti-slavery agitators. Antifa, we might even call them. Asserting, quote, there is no evidence, direct or indirect, that Lee ever had them or any other Negroes flogged. The usage at Arlington and elsewhere in Virginia forbade such a thing, close quote. At least 4 other historians have disputed the inconsistent claims. Irrespective of lost cause appropriation, Lee must be judged by evidence. Although against rapidly granting the voting rights, post-war he exhorted support of Reconstruction. As president of Washington College, Lexington, he expelled white students for anti-African American violence. Much of John Reeves's book is valuable. On Lee himself, Greenfield says it's a takedown. Shaky, I contend. Greenfield's own last paragraph, uncontextualized, is misleading. Ending the, quote, lost indictment of Robert E. Lee leaves little doubt that the jury of history must find the general guilty as charged, is wrong. Anthony Marcel is contesting in this letter that a wholesale indictment of Robert E. Lee as a proponent of slavery and as a traitor is wrong. That is revisionist history, that there's no accurate way to look, that if you look at the man's actions in context, you can't come to those conclusions. And I'm sure I don't need to stress the rebuttal, right? I don't need to stress the obvious, which is that the man that Anthony Marcel is accusing of not being a traitor led armies against the armies of the United States of America. And the man that Anthony Marcel is accusing of being open-minded and tolerant towards, progressive even, towards slaves, owned slaves for his whole life. There is no use using hindsight here. Robert E. Lee is dead bang guilty on every count imaginable. If you leave out the slavery element, and of course you shouldn't, but you don't need to either, because he kept slaves. I don't care about one rip about the fact that his father-in-law's plantation was in debt, and he needed to keep his slaves and work them, and allow his overseers to you-know-what them, in order to recoup that debt. I don't give a rip about that debt. We're talking about living people, families, being treated as slave animals on a farm, on a plantation. If Robert E. Lee were equivocal or against slavery, that situation would have gone very differently. And if we leave out the question of slavery entirely, there is absolutely no way conceivable to exonerate Robert E. Lee. Anthony Marcel mentions that Lee's indictment for treason aimed at those responsible for the rebellion was dropped because, besides the desire for reconciliation, Lee was not responsible for any criteria for secession or initiation of force. The commanding general of the opposing armies, the armies in rebellion against the United States, is responsible for the initiation of force. And the reconciliation element was by far the most important one. It was by far the governing element in the fact that the nation didn't go after Robert E. Lee in blood and tissue, which is what the nation should have done. In fact, the nation shouldn't have even been bothered to do that. Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox should have had General Lee sign the Articles of Surrender and then told his soldiers to drag the old man to the nearest tree and hang him. That's exactly what should have happened right then. Well within Grant's remit on the battlefield. Well within that remit. No court in the world could have convicted him. And it was the right thing to do. This was a man who led, with a small degree of competency, armies in the field against the United States of America. As soon as he surrendered, he should have been hanged. He wasn't. Instead, he was honored. He was the good Confederate, one of many, but the foremost one of many. And that need for reconciliation governed a lot of how he was treated. But there is no way to say that he was, what was it again? Not responsible by any criterion for succession or initiation of force? What's that supposed to mean? So the South secedes from the Union, and Lee's not guilty of initiation of force because it was the North that said, this is against the law? Lee initiated plenty of force and killed lots of Americans in doing it. And because of, again, his passable amount of skill, the South was able to keep doing that for a lot longer than it would otherwise have done. We won't get into the weeds about how Lee's own tactics and strategy were so god-awful that they resulted in death mill amounts of fatalities. One way or another, a letter defending him on either of the two counts on which he is screamingly guilty, a lifelong slave owner, a plantation owner, who led armies in the field against the United States government, and the 2 points you're defending him on are slavery and treason? I can't wait to see if that letter generates a response. I'm hoping that it does, because I'm here to see the fur fly. But we also, in addition to those, we also have packages. We have a couple of packages from publishers, 2 of these cardboard things. So we'll go through those for this Megastuff video. They could both be finished copies. That would be very nice. Oh my. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, this is another one from the University of Chicago Press. That's great. We had one of those yesterday. Oh my. Oh my. Okay. This comes out in mid-September. This is by Japreet Verdi, and this is Hearing Happiness, Deafness Cures in History. And there you have someone with a tube, and of course those of you who love Victorian literature and Victorian visual iconography will know the big ear horn, the big tin ear horn that is often in the butt of jokes. Boy, there's going to be a lot of snake oil in this too, though. A lot of people who are desperate for anything to get their hearing back. At the age of 4, the author's world went silent. Oh no, she herself. Oh my. A severe case of meningitis left her alive but deaf. Suddenly treated differently by everyone. Never quite deaf enough for the deaf community or quite hearing enough for the normal majority, she was stuck in an oral limbo for years. It wasn't until her 30s that she began to actively assert her deafness and re-examine society's and her own perception of life as a deaf person in America. Taking us from the 1860s up to the present, Verdi combs archives and museums to show us the long history of curious cures, hearing trumpets, violet ray apparatus, electrotherapy, airplane diving, bloodletting, skull hammering, and many more. Hundreds of procedures and products have promised grand miracles but always failed to deliver. A legacy that is still present in contemporary biomedicine. Boy, oh boy, is that true. Oh my, is that true. I knew someone a few years ago who started to lose his hearing. Haphazardly. Sometimes it would be fine, sometimes it would be fine in one ear and totally gone in the other. Sometimes it would be gone completely. And then it would be back. It wasn't psychosomatic, it wasn't in his head, it wasn't caused by moods or diet or anything like that. And it was getting more and more serious, to the point where he ordered hearing aids, to the point where whole conversations would be guesswork. Embarrassing guesswork. And boy, oh boy, I was there as he went from doctor to doctor to doctor, specialists all across the country, racked up a file a foot thick, with doctors obviously just guessing, obviously just taking wild stabs in the dark at one thing or another that could be. Must have been absolutely maddening. I mean, it was. I know that it was. I watched it be absolutely maddening. I mean, can you think of another thing? The number of things, the number of health issues in the world where that would happen is smaller every day. If you have some sort of tendon inflammation, you're not going to have 16 doctors each giving you a different diagnosis of what it is and how to fix it. And yet, if you have a hearing problem, you're going to hear about diet, you're going to hear about blood pressure, you're going to hear about moods, as if the whole thing were psychosomatic. You're going to hear about the inner ear and cochlear implants and blood flow and sugar and all kinds of stuff. Because I got the impression that a large number of the doctors that this person I knew, that a large number of doctors he saw had no idea what they were talking about. And I guess it's always been that way. It's the human ear is an unbelievably complex machine. It's unbelievably delicate. Weaving the author's own experience together with her exploration into a fascinating history of deafness cures. Hearing Happiness is a powerful story that America needs to hear. Okay. All right. Fantastic. That is fantastic. It's mid-September that this comes out, and it is today, September 1st, so it's well within range for me to read it. I wonder if this is going to have, this is a finished copy. I wonder if it'll have pictures. Okay, it does. It doesn't have an inset, but it does have pictures. I wonder if we can see some early pictures of what some of these things look like. Vibraphones from the 1920s. Stick that in your ear and it vibrates. I wonder if that was to increase sound or to fix your ear through vibrations. I'm sure that was oh my. Okay, well, this is going to have sufferers. This is going to have pioneers. It's going to have everything. Fantastic. So who is the author? Oh my, she's young. Look at that. Very young to live through this. She's assistant professor of history at the University of Delaware, and this is her first book. Fantastic. Okay. All right, so fascinating nonfiction to start with, and then we have one more. I don't think I have any other Megastuff for you today. I kvetched about a book. I showed you babies. I told you tedious anecdotes. I read you a letter from the TLS. Oh, okay. This is another finished copy. Fantastic. Always up for those. Oh, great. Okay. All right. Do we have any kind of paperwork? No, we don't. Okay. Great. Fantastic. This is a finished copy of something we've talked about on this channel before. I have read it. I really enjoyed it. I would very much look forward to reading it again. I will read it again right now. This is about Selim I, Sultan of Turkey. This is God's Shadow, Sultan Selim, His Ottoman Empire, and the Making of the Modern World by Alan McHale in a finished copy. And Alan McHale is a professor of history and the chair of the Department of History at Yale University, and has reforged our understanding of the past through his previous 3 prize-winning books about the history of the Middle East. And this is about the Sultan Selim, and I am going to be reviewing this for a venue to be named later. I can't wait to tell you about it. So fantastic. Glad to have the finished copy. Because now that I do, I've been kind of sort of unconsciously waiting on this. Now that I have the finished copy, I will write the review. When it comes, I mentioned this before, those of you those of you who are new to the channel won't have any idea what I'm talking about. I'm a book reviewer. Those of you who are brand new to the channel, that's all I do, is write book reviews. And when you're writing a book review of a work of nonfiction, it really helps to have the finished maps, to have the finished illustrations, to have the bibliography, the notes, all that's the index. It really helps to have all of that. And this will have all of that. Fantastic. Okay, so those are our 2 books. One on the history of hearing cures, and one on the Sultan Selim. So those are our books, and we have the TLS, and we have the magazines, and we have a bunch of babies. No Mailman Updates, but also what the other thing was this annoyingly destroyed cover that I'm going to try to save. Because I mean I can read and enjoy the book without the cover, but I'd kind of like to have the cover. So there you go. That is your Megastuff video for this Tuesday. That plus Zoom. With Zoom, I want to do it all. I want to do it all. I'm home all the time. I read a lot. I'm picturing Zoom conversations with booktubers, Zoom conversations with authors, and especially maybe Zoom conversations with indie authors who don't get a lot of publicity, but whose books might be worth your attention. So the next few indie books I regularly read everything. I regularly read as much as I can, and that includes a substantial diet of new indie titles. And the next couple of indie books that I read that I really like, in other words, the kind that I would genuinely recommend to you, I'm going to contact the author and see if they'd be willing to do a Zoom chat. Because I now have exactly what I've always wanted. I have the infrastructure completely down. I know how to operate Zoom. I know how to record it. I know how to upload it. And I've got a very generous offer to edit out the bumpy bits. That's all I need. That's all I need, and that's all done now. Now I must put out my tentacles and find people to be in Zoom conversations. I will, and then they will just be part of the videos that I do here. But anyway, I'm going to wrap up this Megastuff video for now, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.